Deputy Mayor, when you're ready. We are being recorded and live streamed.
Okay, thank you. Welcome everyone to our regular council meeting for March the 15th, the Ides of March. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the Township YouTube channel. Please use the raise your hand button on the bottom right of your screen, and I'll try to notice those as much as possible when you have a question or wish to make a comment. I'd now like to call the roll. Please raise your hand and state your presence when I call your name. The mayor is not able to attend tonight due to a home issue. Not serious, but he will be with us at a near future meeting. First on the list I've got is Councillor Watt.
Present.
Councillor Landsman. Councillor Watson. And myself, Deputy Mayor Mulher. Thank you. Along with the council, we have the Chief Administrative Officer, Ilana Arthurs, Acting Clerk Martina Tate Harwick, Martina, our Interim Treasurer, Paul Kramer, and Manager of Public Works, Jake Condon. So with all council in attendance, except for one, I call the meeting to order. The land acknowledgement, I'll start with that. We respectively acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of the Michi, Sagi, and Nishabeg territory. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and the teaching about in our earth and our relations. May we honor those teaching. Along with that, could we also have a moment of silence for further reflection on the people in Ukraine that are going through some crazy times in their family for the last number of weeks. So take a few moments of silent reflection. Thank you. Is there any pecuniary interest on any of the matters being in front of us? Could I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Okay, Councillor Tom, and seconded by Councillor Landsman. And all in favor? All in favor? Carried. Okay, now the adoption of the minutes and business arising from the minutes.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. It wouldn't unmute. I do have a comment about the minutes of March 1st, if I may.
Okay, let's, sure, go ahead then.
Yeah, bylaw 2022-10 does not appear to have been moved or seconded in the minutes. And I see Martina has her hand up.
Go ahead, Martina.
Through you, Mr. Chair, both bylaw 2022-10 and bylaw 2022-12 were moved and approved within the same motion. That's resolution number 65-2022, where both bylaws were accepted and passed.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
A motion to receive and adopt those minutes. Tom, seconded by Sheila. All in favor? Carried. Okay, next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. I guess need a motion to receive the consent agenda. Two items there that I think we've already dealt with both of them. Heather, go ahead. And seconded by Sheila. All in favor? Carried. We have a delegation. This has to do with the council remuneration report. Council have a policy, or has had a policy, I believe, that every term of council, it's reviewed before the end of the current term for the future council primarily. It's the main objective. So Ilana, would you take it and introduce Jane to members of council and staff and also to the general public.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jane comes to us from Gallagher Benefit Services. In conjunction with our staff compensation review, we included the council remuneration as well so that we can have this in place prior to the next term of council. So Jane will provide her presentation and the comparators throughout the county as well as neighboring municipalities and where our council members should be as far as the remuneration goes.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jane. Now, if anyone has questions during the presentation, you're going to have to call out to me because I can't see your electronic hand. So go ahead, Jane.
All right, I'll just share my screen here first. Okay, are we live now?
Yes.
Okay. Whoops. Okay, so thank you very much for some time on your agenda again. Whoops, apologies for that. Just to go over the council remuneration review that we did in concert with the non-union staff review. So the project that we undertook here for the township is to assess the remuneration and the expense policies that typically the elected officials or the council members have. And we wanted to compare those to other municipalities of similar size and scope of responsibility for our analysis. When we're looking at council compensation or council remuneration, it's an entirely different kind of construct in terms of what we're looking at and the premise of the compensation. And as our report had indicated, it's not so much that you want to be competitive because you don't compete against one municipality to another, but we want to make sure there's certain elements that we take into consideration when we are recommending any changes to the remuneration level. So first and foremost is that it would be fair remuneration, just giving consideration to the time and the effort that's required to be an elected official and fulfill your roles and responsibilities as a member of council. We also recognize that being a councillor or a mayor is no longer quite as simple as it may have been in the early days. The issues that are put forward to you with economic growth, with pandemic, with health and safety, homelessness, all kinds of different issues that are put before the council. Does require that you do your due diligence in terms of making sure that you review the documentation, you review the reports, and you understand it so that you're making an informed decision. So again, this is looking to your qualifications, your skills, your analyticals, and your due diligence to doing the right thing for the community and recognizing the impact of your decisions. There's a growing increase as well in terms of councils wanting to make sure that their remuneration is sufficient so that it will attract at least a broader base of candidates to the table. Again, it's to make sure that your council members reflect your community in terms of diversity, in terms of age and gender and so forth. So you want to make sure that although most people do not put their hand forward for running for elected office because of the money, it's certainly not a moneymaker, I don't think. But by the same token, you also want to make sure that given all of the responsibilities that you have and the time and the commitment, you don't want the remuneration to be so low that it becomes a barrier to having candidates stand for election. And then the last component is to make sure that we have something that is a reasonable framework of how other municipalities are remunerating their municipal councils across the province. So we had 9 municipalities that participated in our council review. These municipalities are also included in the staff review, but the staff compensation review is just a little bit broader because of some other considerations for competition. The survey participants are there. Obviously, there's a heavy emphasis on the county of Peterborough comparators or peer municipalities. We developed a survey for this review. So we asked all of our comparators to complete the survey and, if possible, provide us with a copy of their bylaws. So we wanted to focus in on what is the base remuneration that is being offered to the councillors and the mayor and deputy mayor if they have that position. What are the per diems that are being paid to the different councillors or the different members, and what are the reasons why a per diem would be paid, under what circumstances? We want to look at allowable expenses. Do you have car allowance, vehicle allowance, other cash allowances, and expenses that you're allowed to submit? And then pensions and benefits. Are there any benefits that are available to elected officials? And if so, what are the terms and conditions of those offerings? So we took all of the survey responses and tabulated all of the results and provided this as the comparison basis for our recommendation. On the base remuneration, it typically, when you think about what's the base remuneration paying members for, it's to recognize the time that you are to attend to council meetings, but also to perform your constituency work. And constituency work would be, in some instances, I'm sure it is very high, draw on your time and effort. In other constituencies or wards or locations, it might be fairly minimal. The basis of comparison, we've used 2021 data. That's when we launched the survey, and we are targeting the 50th percentile, even though I don't believe you have a stated pay policy for council remuneration. In terms of how do we assess whether something is aligned to the market, if it's plus or minus 5%, if the statistic that we find is plus or minus 5% of what the market is telling us, then we say for all intents and purposes, it's aligned to the market. You can't be that exact to know that, it has to be the exact same number or within a percentage point or not. So we've given some leeway in terms of the plus or minus 5%. Anything that is approaching, the 5%, the 10% or higher, is you're really moving away from the marketplace, the comparator group, and what the practices are that they have. So the chart on the slide that we have up here is indicating what the Township of Douro-Dummer has for their base remuneration. We've indicated what's the average across the 9 comparator organizations, and then what's the median being the middle data point that we have. So the chart is telling us that on the median basis, which tends to be where we'll focus on, the median is 33,000 versus the mayor's current salary for 2021 was 29,476. So there's a fair gap there between what your comparator organizations are paying on the base level of remuneration of about 12%. So that's fairly significant in the grand scheme. The deputy mayor role, not all comparators have the deputy mayor position, but where they do, that there is still a gap of 7.3% between what your comparator organizations or peer municipalities are paying versus what your level of compensation is. And then at the councillor level, it's not quite as bad. You are within that plus or minus 5%. So we would say the councillors' pay at the township of $20,612 is pretty well aligned to what is being offered or being paid out in the comparator organizations. The other thing we like to just do a check on is to make sure there's a difference between what the councillor makes and the deputy mayor and the mayor, because there are different levels of responsibilities with each of those jobs. So we don't want to see too tight of a difference between those roles, because otherwise you're not giving due recognition or due diligence to those different responsibilities. So we looked at what are the pay practices of your comparator organizations or peer organizations to adjust your base salary. So it's not only setting the salary, but are you maintaining that salary on a go-forward basis? Just as you would with your staff positions, you take a look at cost of living. And so are these salaries or base remunerations being adjusted as time goes on over the term of the 4-year term of council? So the township is currently using a universal 2% across the board each year, which by circumstance, it could potentially have the effect of being over whatever the inflationary rates might be, but it also could be under the inflationary rates. So it is leveling it all out. You do have known costs. It's easy to project. You just take the salary and you project 2% each year. So it's from a budgetary perspective, it's practical. It's just a cautionary note to say, it might not be keeping you aligned to what your comparator organizations or your peer organizations are doing. It's not a standard practice that's widely used. You do have per diems that are being paid for attending meetings and or attending conferences. So we did separate out in our survey questions. We asked the question whether councillors are paid a per diem for attending council meetings, or is it special meetings or committee meetings, ad hoc, working groups. There's quite a variety of terms that are used across the organizations in terms of what is being paid for, what the per diem is being paid for. And as the slide indicates, there's no universal practice that we can really strongly rely on. Part of the challenge being is what one municipality might call a special committee, another municipality might call it a standing committee, another one might call it an ad hoc working group. So it's a little bit difficult to draw direct comparisons, but it is still an indicator in terms of per diems that are paid. The indicated here is 4 of the 9 comparators do pay the per diem meetings, and the median is 125 per day, but the eligibility differs. In some instances, it's only for very, very specific meetings, or other meetings, other municipalities. It could be after 12 council meetings, the 13th council meeting, you might get a per diem for. So it's a variety of rationales across the group. Your township, the Douro-Dummer, does have a per diem of $95 per committee of the adjustment meetings or special council meetings as well. The council, the per diem that is paid for when council members attend formal conferences or training programs, workshops where they have to be away. Usually when you go for a conference, you're away for the entire day. So that takes you away from your own paid work that you might have elsewhere. So this is kind of in recognition of that as well. And your per diem in this instance is a little bit higher than what the comparator organizations are paying. We looked at travel expenses. How are municipalities remunerating their councillors for the mileage that they're putting on their vehicles, or any kilometers? So per kilometer basis is the predominant practice, not only across your comparator organizations, but typically across the sector as well, is that whatever kilometers it takes you to work on county business or municipal business, township business, you put in your kilometer expense claim for it. There is one of the comparators that we have in the group that does pay for the first group of kilometers. They'll pay an allowance as opposed to having per kilometer expense claims submitted. But then once you've hit that threshold, then anything else is on a per kilometer basis. There's pros and cons to having a travel allowance. It does tend to be, I believe, a taxable benefit. I think our treasurer is on the call too, so he might be able to step in on that. But so there's pros and cons of whether you want to have an allowance or not. The other question that we ask is, are you paying for kilometers that are incurred while you are within your county boundaries or within your township boundaries? So if you are attending a council meeting, are you paid for the commute back and forth, or is it only for commuting outside of your municipal boundary? So 3 of the 4 that did identify, 3 of the 9, 3 pay for all, and that doesn't add up to 9. 3 pay for all, 4 pay for travel only outside of the boundary. So there were 7 observations there that the comparators did respond to that question. So it's a little bit of a split, 3 and 4 on that particular question. The per kilometer rate is typically the median rate for all travel on the council business. Because we included a fair number of Peterborough County lower tier municipalities, they do tend to follow what the Peterborough County is providing, which is aligning the per kilometer rate to the CRA rate. The access to insured benefits. This is insured health, insured dental benefits. It could be life insurance or out of country travel or accidental death and dismemberment type of insurance. And the council members here in Douro-Dummer do have access to these benefits, and the township is paying 50% of the premium. The member is paying the other 50%. So this is slightly better than what the comparator groups are offering, just in terms of having the full access. It's not a, it's quite, the practice is quite diverse across the province in terms of offering insured health and dental and the different life insurance coverages as well. And then the last area that we explored was what kind of access do you have as a member to technology, technology being a laptop or an iPad or a cell phone, internet service. Sometimes there's municipalities that are now providing a stipend for to cover your cost of your internet. It might be something that gets raised a little bit more if we continue with the virtual meetings. But for now, your practices are aligned to what the other practices are across your comparator organizations or peer organizations. So all in all, taking a look at the base pay, the per diems, the benefits that are being offered, these are the recommendations that we have come forward with for council's consideration. First and foremost is to establish in your policy a formal policy to pay at the market median of the comparator market group. We are recommending that you revisit how you are calculating your annual adjustments to the base pay or the base remuneration and align it more to what is being offered to the staff or how you adjust your staff increases, which is currently to the OMERS rate. And then to also confirm, as you currently have as your practice, that you undertake a market review once per term of council. It is best practices to make sure you do this. Then in terms of the base remuneration, because of the gap to the market, we are suggesting or making a recommendation that you should be brought, the mayor's base pay should be brought back into closer alignment to the market comparator group, not right to the median, but at least tempering that by saying, let's get you at least within plus or minus 5%. What that amounts to is an increase of 7% or a 2021 base remuneration rate of $31,539. Similarly, with the deputy mayor position, we are suggesting that to bring you within the plus or minus 5% market median is an increase of 2.5%. Excuse me. And then maintaining the councillor's base pay. I'm just going to mute for a second so I can cough. Pardon me. And then all of the recommendations here, the base salaries have to be adjusted, or we're suggesting should be adjusted by the staff increase as well. I'm sorry, I've got a cough. Okay, I'm just going to stop sharing because that's the end of that.
Thank you, Jane. Questions? Tom, go ahead, please.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Jane, very much. It's good to know all these things, and just for the benefit of everyone watching stuff like that, we're doing the council one here now, but we have done the staff one, and we will be coming through with more information on that in open forum here in the very near future. One question that I have, and maybe staff can correct me on this. One of your slides there had the part where you have the extra, like the committee of adjustment, and I think there was two things on there. I can't remember exactly what the second one was, of 95. Oh, special meetings at $95 per pay. But I believe on my spreadsheet, the only thing that I get paid extra for is conferences and I think emergency preparedness. I think if I put in for a committee of adjustment meeting, it comes off of my council remuneration. It's not an extra on top of it. So, but correct me if I'm wrong on that, staff, please.
That's true, Jane. Did you want to comment further on that, Martina or Alana?
I might leave it to Alana or Paul. I haven't actually looked at what your pay sheets look like in quite a long time, so I can't remember at the moment.
On committee of adjustment, I think that the reason for that, it's included in the total because for accounting, you're tracking the cost of committee of adjustment and committee of planning. And the only way to do that is we wanted to have an honorarium that included everything and save a whole lot of accounting, but you want to track your committee of adjustment expenses. So $95 for that meeting, I don't think it's probably going to adjust the bottom line of what's recommended too often, because there might be 6 or 7 committee of adjustment meetings over a 1-year period. Sheila, did you have a question?
Yes, I did, through you to, I don't know, possibly Martina. It mentioned in Jane's presentation about special meetings, special council meetings. I don't believe they're included in our timesheets.
No, they're included in the base honorarium as well.
Yep. And Tom is correct that it does go only to allocate it to committee of adjustment, and then it's taken back off there.
Okay, further questions, comments? Heather, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through you. Jane, a question with respect to the recommendations under policy and administration that you're bringing forward. I'm wondering why there wouldn't be or isn't a fourth recommendation to adopt some sort of formal policy around mileage. Right now, I believe the way that it is, other than paying, the CRA rate, there's no caps in place potentially. And although I know all of council are very good stewards of that, it could be, it's a bit of a free-for-all, not having those types of definitions on what should be permitted as mileage, or a cap on what that annual amount could be. So I wonder if that's why that wasn't part of your recommendation.
I'd be hesitant to put a cap on kilometers, because particularly across the different townships, the size of the townships can be quite different. And depending on how active you are, how many committees you belong to, how many, constituency things you have to attend to. So to put a cap on it is then starting to limit you in terms of your responsibilities as a member of council. So I would be hesitant to indicate a cap. I think your practices are within what we see across the sector. You are paying a CRA rate. It's a good rate. It's a pretty good standard across not just private sector, public sector, all of the different sectors. So they tend to rely on the CRA rate. And you are paying for travel inside the municipal boundary and outside of the municipal boundary. So again, that doesn't constrain you in terms of doing your job as a representative of the constituency. So I wouldn't necessarily make any recommendation to change your current practice. Again, there's an underlying assumption that everyone does their due diligence and does their, responsible, I'm going to the coffee shop, so I'm not going to necessarily put that into my, expense claim kind of thing. So.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? Paul, did you have a comment?
I was going to comment just on and confirm what you were saying about how the honorarium covers all meetings. Martina is asking me some questions on the side here, just making sure that we are clear and we have the right information for you. I'm going to clarify, going forward that is the practice. I'm almost positive it is, but still getting my feet grounded on some of these smaller little details in the township. So I do want to make sure that is the practice, but it is my understanding that it is.
Thank you. Okay, now I guess the next steps, what do you, Alana, what do you feel is the next step? Should we have a motion of the current council to bring forward a report at a near future meeting to adopt or make changes? Or are there any changes that council want to make, or should we just table this until it comes up on our agenda at a near future meeting?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think based on the information that we have and just our comments from the treasurer, I think consolidating this remuneration bylaw with the previous one that you had and making sure that we have it all in one bylaw and it's outlined clearly would be beneficial for council to approve for the next term of council. We can draft that as staff and bring it back potentially, possibly the beginning of April. If not, we could do it at a later date. There really is no rush. If there's anything specific, though, that council really wants to dive into over and above the salary that we've talked about today, then we may want to wait a little longer to do that. But if council is comfortable with the way that things are, we can come back and bring together a consolidated bylaw if we don't believe there's any major changes for council's adoption for the next term of council.
Okay. Is there a motion that a council member would like to move and second?
Oh.
Tom, go ahead.
Okay. Did you want me to go? Okay. I'm going to make a motion that we follow the recommendation in here and that staff bring it back to us in a future meeting. As they said, it's not a big panic on it. And in the meantime, if there's any sections that we want to talk about specifically before that comes back, please get those into staff ahead of time.
Okay, is there a seconder for that motion, Sheila? Any comments or questions? Tom, go ahead.
Yes, if I may, through you, Mr. Chair. So just so totally clear on this is for our next term of council, or is this going to, okay, that is for this term or for the next term of council. All right, thank you very much.
I believe it's effective 2022. Is it part of the recommendation? Is that not, Jane, was that not your, did I not read that somewhere?
The intent is it's for the next term of council, and that's typical practice so that you don't feel that you're being compromising, you know, voting on your own remuneration.
Sure, okay. I missed that then. Heather, question.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead,
Yes, I am still a little confused on the honorariums that are paid. I understand that it's deducted, if you will, from the annual the remuneration that's received by those members. But does that now not skew the actual numbers on the median? Like those members are now not getting any compensation for those, effectively, for those meetings. And should the recommendations, I'm looking for some numbers here, instead of at 4.8%, it might come at 5.3% or what have you for the median gap. I don't know what went into those calculations.
I think if I could just speak in here now, I believe that was part of our review either 4 years ago or even prior to that. And I think Sheila and Tom will probably remember that trying to keep all these meetings tracked, it was just easier to make it part of the total package. Like, in other words, we have an average number of meetings to attend a month or a year, and that's part of your honorarium. That was how it came about. And I think the honorarium was increased proportionately higher than it normally would be to include all special meetings and save the tracking of those. And I think that's, Sheila, do you remember that, or Tom?
I do remember that, yes. And that's the reason it was done, because it was complicated to keep all the tracking separate.
Yeah. Do you agree with that, Tom? Yeah. That was the background on it anyway. So did you have anything further, Heather, to? Okay.
I do. I'm sorry. It must have been before my time, because I am completely ignorant to the history on this, and I apologize for that. But I'm just looking at it, by the numbers, and if the recommendation is to increase the remuneration for mayor and deputy mayor, by the annotated percentages, does that take into consideration now that they're, not the 25 meetings that was referenced in research, but the 25 plus the others? And do those numbers end up changing now that this information is available and is now known to to Jane and her colleagues through this process. That's what I'm just trying to understand.
Alana, I think I missed your hand. Did you have a comment, Alana?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to try to clarify for Councillor Watson, and that is like our mistake providing the information to Jane. I think, again, when I go back to the remuneration bylaw, it's not overly clear, and we forwarded on the bylaws, but we never had that conversation. So I think generally, Jane, a question to you, if we look at the fact that they're not being compensated additionally for those committee of adjustment and special council meetings, is that going to skew the salary that has been recommended? And do we need to just go back and reevaluate those numbers? And when we come back with this remuneration bylaw, we'll bring it back in a draft format. We won't bring it for approval on the day of the council meeting so that we do have an opportunity to have the discussion. But if Jane, you can comment, is there some additional work that we should be doing based on that information?
I will definitely go back and double check. My initial reaction is that because the per diems used by the other municipalities is really for, I mean, one of them, as it says in my appendix, that, you know, anything that exceeds 24 meetings per year, you get the additional per diem in that particular municipality. Special meetings exceeding 3 per month. So if you feel that you're exceeding those kind of parameters that other municipalities are using, then yeah, it could impact on your base remuneration, or at least maybe, you know, give consideration to changing your per diem practice. But overall, I think you'll probably still net out if or come very close to it. To the point, though, that the councillor comparison is 4.4% off the market median, and we were using that threshold of plus or minus 5%. It is possible that there could be an adjustment there. So I think rather than making an analysis on the fly, I'll go back and take a look at the impact that would have.
Sheila, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Through you to anybody. At this time, correct me if I'm wrong, but you are the only person on the Committee of Adjustment from Council. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So this was done when all of Council was on the Committee of Adjustment. And then when it changed, it hasn't been something that's affected us, because we haven't been on Committee of Adjustment for 4 years. Tom, Heather, 8 years? No, we haven't been on Committee of Adjustment for quite a while. So that's probably part of the difference.
Just one further comment I'd like to make, and I know I was going to challenge Jane on this, is the market observations of the basic remuneration. You say the basic remuneration typically recognize time required to attend council meetings. I find a big time consumer of this function is reading the minutes or meeting the agenda. You know, we get 100 to 200, sometimes 300 pages, and we're sitting down for hours on a Sunday afternoon going through them. And but you know, that's part of the job. So and we've done it willingly from start to finish. So I guess that's another consideration. But and I guess there's probably the odd councillors in Ontario that don't read their agenda either. So, well, thank you very much, Jane. If there's no more questions, I guess the motion we need to have is to, I guess, have staff to maybe work with Jane to come up with some little bit, see if there's an update required, and bring it back to council in 2 parts, one in a draft form, and then maybe the following meeting in a bylaw. Is that an appropriate resolution? Tom?
I would amend my motion to do that if the clerk is good with that. Or do you want to bring
Martina?
Don't.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I was just going to say that there was a motion on the floor and it had been duly seconded. So if the mover would like to amend the motion, as long as the seconder is okay with that, we can do so.
Okay, the mover, who was the seconder? Was that you, Sheila, or was it him? Sheila, are you okay with that change or those additional information? Any questions, comments? All in
You
favor?
okay?
It's carried. Okay, thank you very much, Jane. You've given us lots of information, so thank you. And we'll see your input soon. Thank you. Okay, the next thing is, I guess we're finished with item 8, delegations and the resolution there. Sheila,
Do we need a motion to receive the delegation?
I guess we probably do. Thank you. Martina,
Through you, Mr. Chair, part of Councillor Watt's motion was to receive the presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. Okay. Yep.
Thank you. You're just trying to catch me, Sheila.
No.
Okay, other business and staff reports. Leaf and yard waste bin, Public Works. Jake, thank you for your patience and waiting in the wings.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The recommendation before you is that the Public Works 2020-02 report dated March 15th, 2022 regarding the leaf and yard waste bin be received, and that council approved the continuation of providing the leaf and yard waste bin at the Public Works yard during regular business hours, and further that the bin be available from approximately April 1st to November 30th during the Public Works business hours. At a previous council meeting, staff were directed to bring back a fair solution regarding this green waste bin. I feel this is a good solution for residents. It provides approximately 8 months of access to the bin. It also provides staff the opportunity to maintain and monitor the site while it's in place. There will be an additional approximately $2,600 required, which will come from the waste management budget. And again, these dates are approximate. You know, if the weather is in April or April 1st, we still have snow on the ground, well, we may push that off a couple of weeks until it's more favorable weather for spring cleanup. And as same goes for November 30th. If the winter approaches quicker or longer, we may keep it in place longer. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions for Jake? Heather, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you. Thanks, Jake, for the report. Just to clarify, the April 1st to November, I understand plus or minus snow. I hope we don't have snow soon. That's just me. But when would you, remind me again, please, when would you typically put this out? It wouldn't be further on until May. It would be pulled in. What were those general rules that we were using before?
We just played it, like you said, played it by year. It was generally April, mid-April, springtime of year, and we would remove it again in June-ish, late June. So it's providing an additional 2 months approximately to the residents.
Okay.
Great, thank you very much.
Any further questions, Tom?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to make a motion to follow the recommendation. And if someone seconds it, then I do have a comment to make, please.
Sheila is seconded. And
thank you.
Tom.
I totally agree with the through the business hours. I know there's certain people are going to say, well, I can't come on a Saturday and Sunday, but I did myself see last year it was getting abused big time. There was a big trailer in there with like huge stumps and logs and like great big trees, stuff like that, and they couldn't even put it in the bin. They just had to dump it on the ground beside it, which is more work for the roads department to clean it up. And if we can't monitor it, if it can't be done responsibly, we've got to do our part to make it responsible. So I do fully agree with this recommendation.
Just a comment, Jake, I wonder when you're ready to go, if you could, it'd be nice to have some kind of an email or whatever with the from and to hours of the day for each day, because it is a favorite question for certain ratepayers to call us on the spot and wonder what's going on. And just so we have that readily available. And the other thing is Do you need authorized, let's say, for example, they come in there during the day and they are dumping stuff that shouldn't be there. Do you want authorization from us also to add a camera if need be? Or have you, or is that part of what you might do anyway if there's abuses?
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, that's something we could entertain in the future, but with staff coming and going through the day, it's a good fit for now for us to be able to monitor it. We're in and out of there enough to keep an eye on it.
Good, thank you. Sheila, you have a comment?
Yes, I do. Through you to Jake, just to confirm the hours, Jake, Monday 7 a.m. until Friday 1 p.m. So is that Monday night, early morning? Like, is that 24/7 at that point?
Yep, that's correct. It'd be available.
Okay, because that could be publicized. I know a lot of people on the lake use it, and I know that there will be unhappy people that can't take it on the weekend. I'm sure that will come up, but I can certainly publicize those hours and tell them, smarten up or it's going to be taken away, period. So, yeah, I think it's pretty much the only thing you can do.
Okay, are we ready to vote on that? All in favor of the motion? It's carried. Okay, next item is purchase of roadside mower, Public Works. Jake, you're on again.
Thank you. The recommendation before you is that the Public Works 2022-04 report dated March 15th, 2022 regarding the purchase of a roadside mower be received for information. Again, if there's any questions, I can happy to answer.
You've had good success with that mower last year, or similar arrangement last year.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, motion, Tom and Heather.
I'll make a motion to follow the recommendation. Yes, thank you.
And any questions, comments? All in favor? It's carried. Next item is the council remuneration statement. I guess we just have to receive that. Unless, Paul, you want to add any comments or questions?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, no additional comments or questions. Just for information, it's a required report.
Okay. Sheila moves it to receive it, and Heather seconds it. All in favor? It's carried. 9.4, delegation of powers bylaw. Martina, can you take us through the highlights there and maybe highlight what the changes might be?
Absolutely.
Or the major changes, I guess.
So the recommendation that's before you is that the clerk planning report 2022-17 dated March 15, 2022 regarding the delegations of powers bylaw be received and that the bylaw be approved at the appropriate point in the meeting. So in preparation for our 2022 municipal election, council is aware that I've been bringing updated policies and bylaws to get us ready for that period. And one of the documents that needs to be reviewed before every election specifically is the delegations of powers bylaw. So this is a bylaw that allows council to delegate certain members of staff to do certain processes and have signing authority in different cases so that these items don't have to come to council unless we find them very controversial, in which case we would bring them to council. But it also allows us to be prepared for the lame duck period if one should occur to council. So in the document, I had highlighted all of the changes in a bright teal color to make it easier to navigate. And then any exclusions or deletions were marked with a cross out. There's not too many big changes. Most of it is housekeeping. And we did change some of the persons who can actually undertake the actions to include a wider variety of senior staff. We know, especially in the summer months, it can be challenging to find our previous list of staff, especially on holidays and things like that. So we've opened that up to have a combination of the mayor, CAO, clerk, or treasurer. so that we have a bit more flexibility depending on who is available. And we've also changed some of the notification requirements. Many of the documents that we would be signing, such as a funding agreement or a land transfer, all of those have to be approved by council before we can sign them. It would just be the signing of the documents that's being delegated. So we have removed some of the notifications because it was it would cause a duplication of work. We would bring a report to council to have council approve the funding, then we would have the agreement signed, and then we'd be bringing back further notification saying that the agreement had been signed. So we've just tried to remove some of that duplication for a better use of staff time and a better use of council's time as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have about the document.
Heather, go ahead, Heather.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to Martina. I did notice the addition of item number 20, the authority to declare a significant weather event. I noticed at a very recent weather event in the last month or so that neighboring municipalities were making that declaration, and clearly the fact that we didn't have this in this particular delegation of authorities perhaps might be why. But can you just speak to the addition of that and what the implications are, please?
Absolutely. So that authority falls under the Ontario Regulation 23902, which is part of the Ontario Minimum Maintenance Standards regulations. And what it basically allows us to do in plain terms is if there is a significant weather event, and significant weather event could be, a massive snowstorm that's going to take place over a couple of days, or a flooding event, or heaven forbid, a tornado or something similar to that, that's just going to be, a really potentially dangerous situation for the public and our staff, or will require additional resources, we can declare a significant weather event, which allows us additional time to address the minimum maintenance standards on the road. So it provides us a bit more flexibility and protects us from liability so that we can get the job done, but we can ensure that both the public and staff are safe while they're completing those tasks on the road. And Jake may have additional comments on that, but that was my interpretation of the legislation from the training we've received so far.
No, through you, Mr. Chair, that is Martina's right on the ball there. That gives the staff more time to make the roads fall under the minimum maintenance standards. That's the main objective of that.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments, motion? Heather, go ahead.
I will move to, sorry, I don't have the recommendation in front of me, but I will move the recommendation to adopt or pass the bylaw as presented.
Seconder? Okay, Tom. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Carried. Okay, next report, Stony Lake Road Transfer Station lease. Alana will give us highlights. She put together a detailed report on it. Anything further, Alana?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In addition to the recommendation, just so council is aware, there was an inspection conducted back in 2020 on this site, and the report was provided to us in April of 2021. So we've worked through a few months following that to rectify some of the concerns that the ministry had. When I went back and I looked at this agreement, it was initially put in place in 2007 with M&M Recycling, and then subsequently it was put in place for 10 years, and subsequently they added an additional 5 years during the term, and then Waste Connections took over from M&M. So the initial agreement was actually done 15 years ago, and through that inspection and what we had to respond to for the province, I thought it was beneficial at this point to have a legal review on it, make sure that the agreement that was in place is consistent with what we want to have done today, make sure our liabilities are covered. So the recommendation is not necessarily to extend the lease today, but just to seek that legal review and get council input on any concerns you might have moving forward with this agreement. Waste Connections has indicated that they are looking for this agreement and they would like to put an additional building on. I understand it's of great value to the constituents. I just want to make sure that we have an agreement that is consistent with what our requirements are to date.
Any questions or comments? Tom?
Yes, thank you through Deputy Mayor. Within the last year, I had a local business, which has been in our township for many, many years, approach me about that, wondering when the lease may be coming up, that he might possibly be interested in tendering for that property. And I'm guessing, we didn't really get into details at the time, guessing that maybe to follow doing the same thing, but just under his tutelage and guidance. So I'm kind of wondering, and I don't know whether we have the time at the moment or whether we just extend this lease out for another while to give us the option. But is this something that I'd like to throw to the other council members for their comments on it? Do we see about tendering out this? Because I know it's a good thing we do, but I want to be transparent and give everyone in that's asked about it or that could ask about it in the future a possible chance to do what's being done there now.
I guess if I read it right, I think, Elena, the legal advice would be just first step in the renewal of either the lease or a full tender process. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the idea of this was just to seek legal review on the agreement that was in place and move forward with Waste Connections. Unfortunately, it was one of those that sort of has come up very quickly since I've arrived, and we didn't have time to bring this back and suggest that it be tendered. I hadn't received any comments of anybody else being interested when we put this together. So initially in drafting the report, the intention was to seek legal advice on a 10-year lease agreement with Waste Connections. Understanding Councillor Watt's comments and that, there may be interest, and the process of tendering is that open and transparent process that municipalities should undertake. I'm happy to go back and do that if that's council's wish. We could at this point request that Waste Connections just extends the lease for a year to allow us to do that. And then, we can go through the process of tendering and give staff the opportunity to prepare those documents and the bids to come in and come back to council.
I guess the other thing too, with one building there and another one possible, who owns the building? Is it the municipality or the contractor? So that's another issue that will have to be addressed. Sheila, did I notice your hand? No, okay. I think just some background on this location. I think we were, the Township of the Day, Council of the Day, were very happy that somebody was interested in using the landfill site. And I think one of the other things that we probably should be looking at very seriously is what's the net revenue from the location. I think we were quite happy with a net zero revenue, like expenses less the revenue. Was okay back 10, 15 years ago. But I think it is a good thing to be happening, and I think a lot of contractors, it's a location for bringing their waste building supplies and getting sorted and have some use, and that's what recycling is all about. Not that we want to get really greedy about it, but I think there should be some kind of a legend or some kind of a trend there that moving towards positive revenue income. So might be an appropriate part of the review as well. Heather, did you have a comment?
I did, yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, to your point, Councillor Watt, I appreciate that it is public property, and going through a proper leasing process or a proper tender process makes sense so that other members of the public can have an opportunity. But I also struggle with the thought of, with very little notice, even a year, potentially disrupting a business that's operating in the community and providing this valuable service. So I don't know if there's a way that we can, still have that public process of sorts, but make sure that the existing tenant who has been there for 15 years, notwithstanding the business change, isn't suddenly, this is going to be jarring for their business operation. So I just would want to take that into consideration. Going back to the intent of the report with respect to seeking legal counsel, one question that I do have, and having not really I'm not their target customer, so I haven't spent a whole lot of time on the property. I would be curious to know if our lease agreement does specify or how we can protect ourselves from potential contamination of the land, or what rehabilitation of the land looks like. I mean, I know the land was a former, waste facility, but what happens there if, whether it's 5 years from now, 3 years, or 30 years from now, that tenant leaves and there's additional damage done to the property. So I'd like to get some legal counsel on that specifically.
Okay, just to comment further, I think that's under quarterly, or if not annual reviews anyway of the testing, that location. So I think there's various wells on both sides of the highway there, both north of the site and south of the site and so on, that get monitored by by our environmental people, that, along with all landfill sites closed in the township.
Are they testing for new contaminants though, or are they just testing the decomposition of existing landfill? That's,
I believe they're
good
looking
question.
for, I think it is, and I think part of the recommendation here is that there be a application for an environmental compliance approval. They want that re-looked at again. That's part of Alana's report. So that would be all part of the whole question of what are they doing to it, and verifying that component of it as well. So Sheila, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, I did. I was just going to say exactly what you had said, that it is regularly tested.
Okay. So does that give you enough direction on that, Alana, to move forward? Do you, I guess, move the recommendation, and is there a mover and a seconder?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to be clear on the motion, if it's approved as is, that would have staff move forward with that 10-year lease as opposed to tendering it. So if council wanted to go into a direction of tendering it, I would ask for an alternative motion to the recommendation that's there.
Okay. What's the pleasure, council? Tom?
All right, seeing I was the one that brought it up, I'll just throw this out there, and it's the will of council to say yay or nay. But I would make a motion that we look at the tender, or look at the lease for a year or 2 years, whatever staff's comfortable with at the most, to extend it out and give us time to go through the process. And maybe our legal can also give us some direction on whether we do have tendered out again because it's a public entity, and come back with a recommendation for us at a future meeting.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Heather? Comments? Sheila, go ahead.
Yes, just to be clear, did you say, Tom, 1 or 2 years or 3 years, or did you?
1 or 2 years.
I'd like staff's input on that. I don't want to put them under the gun. Maybe the legal would also probably give us an idea of, hey, let's do a 1 year, let's do a 2 year, to give staff time to do this properly and get everything in line, that we're not going to be in trouble ourselves, or, I just want a plausible timeline for staff. So maybe they could comment on that and I can make my motion more exact.
Okay, do you want more exact right now, Tom, or?
I see Alana's popped up there. What
Okay.
are your thoughts on that, Alana? Would a year or 2 years, or do you have any thoughts on that or comments, or is it just want to throw it on me and I'll make a decision?
Through the chair to Councillor Watt, I appreciate the flexibility. I think in my conversations with Waste Connections, we didn't discuss this as a potential outcome. So I think, with all due respect to them, if you provide me with the flexibility, if this is a motion that gets carried, I will have that ability to go back and have that conversation with them to try to work out a solution for everybody.
Okay, so maybe I won't put a time frame in it, then just get staff to get legal advice on it and come back at a future meeting to give us an update on where we are on it.
Okay, Heather, you second that motion. Are you satisfied with that? Okay,
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
one further comment to Councillor Watt. I wonder if it'd be appropriate to maybe have whoever may have an interest to maybe put their interest in a letter to our CAO, because we don't want to lose a contractor here that's doing, I think, a very valuable service for the greater Peterborough area here with making sure that these building supplies or building waste are not going into our landfill site and costing us big time because we're just going to bury it.
No.
So
I absolutely agree. And
we're going to be very cautious on how we approach this and approach it in a strategic fashion. So if that could be.
And just a question to staff then, is that within my rights to be able to do that, to go back to this person and ask them to put something in and not be skewing the process, whatever, and not saying that this might be the only, that there may be other component or other opponents come in at the, once they know it's open for tender. It's hard to say, but I can certainly go back to this one if that's not a something that's out of my scope of legalities, however you want to put that.
My only question is it's only certain contractors would be qualified to do this.
Yes.
And
Yes.
some people may see it as an opportunity as easy money. And I know with the M&M, they had contracts with various places throughout Ontario that were going to take this material, and setting those up would be extensive. You're not in the business today. So.
No, absolutely. Our tender would have to reflect that, the fact that, these things all have to be in place, as part of the tender process.
Is that enough direction for you, Ilana?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe so. We'll
Okay.
move forward. We'll come back with a subsequent report to council.
Okay, is there all in favor? It's carried. Okay, thank you. Okay, the next item is committee minutes and other reports. Deputy Mayor Moher. Okay, just a couple of county council items. I think I mentioned in our last meeting, the budget is 2.6 has been approved. We're currently very, very busy with development fees review at the county level. That has to be done every 5 years. I'm not sure when the townships comes up again, but this is getting much debate at the county council. And most of the debate is coming from Cavan Monaghan and Asphodel Norwood. And I'm not sure, we're going to be probably spending some time on it again tomorrow. Hopefully it moves forward, because there seems to be, I think when you're in county council, we have to wear a different hat. And sometimes the motion that something we agree at county council may not be favorable to the council we represent. And that's from time to time that happens. And sometimes it can't be helped. It's just the way it is. You've got to have a bigger hat because you are looking at a greater community. And we all know, having been an experience in council, from time to time, there will be certain decisions we make or we decide on that are not in favor of some people. But most people will agree with the majority of our decisions. Now, the next point I want to make is I'm on a committee of, it's the Age-Friendly Committee, Peterborough County. If you have any constituents that you represent that have interest in that, there's various support groups in that committee. They are very, very active. Feel free to go on the website to steer people to the website. Maybe if they're not online themselves, but there's various things out there through community care and through various things that they can take advantage of that provide support to people living in their own home. And just sitting in that committee, the decision we made as a council here a couple of years ago by allowing accessible dwellings on the same property without a rezoning is very popular at the Age-Friendly, because as people get older, they want independent living, but they wanted separate from a son or daughter or whatever. So that's worked out very well. And I understand our CBO, Chief Building Official, has been continuing to have more and more of these in our municipalities. So a lot of municipalities, they have to go through a rezoning, and all you need is one disgruntled neighbor to oppose it, and you're into major bucks. So that's a good thing. I think that's about it for County Council, unless there's some questions. Okay, I guess a motion to receive that report. Sheila and Heather, all in favor? Carried. Okay, next report is report on capital project status. Alana?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the report's been updated, so I'm happy to answer any questions that council might have. It should reflect the current workings of staff and what's happening right now.
Thank you. Any questions? Motion to receive. Tom?
Motion to receive with thanks.
And everyone in favor? Carried. Oh, sorry, Martina.
I'm sorry, I missed who the seconder was.
It was Sheila,
Perfect. Thank you very much.
and it was carried. Okay, County of Peterborough Official Plan TAC Committee, number 35. Meeting. Martina, you, I guess you're probably going to break some good news that Autonomy South Monaghan's hint that they may leave the autonomy or the county plan has been reversed.
We didn't actually talk about that at
Did
the
you not?
meeting
Okay.
that was in front of us, but we have a meeting this week or early next week. I can't remember. But I'm sure that will come up again. The last meeting we had was actually with Hempson, and it was about future population targets and density requirements and an allocation for future housing growth.
Yeah, I think only one township now is considering or have decided or maybe considering to move out of the official plan, and that is the Cavan Monaghan. Anything further, Martina?
Just through you, Mr. Chair, I know that item was listed as 10.3 on your agenda that you'd received, but
Right.
on the actual council agenda, it was not listed. So it's actually an error. We'd already received those minutes at the previous meeting.
Okay,
I think that was just there if there was questions from anyone.
okay. So we don't have to have a motion or anything on it.
Not on that one.
Okay. Next is 10.4, Committee of Adjustment meeting, June the 25th. There has been some months that we haven't had meetings, so is there any questions or anyone like to, I guess, just receive that meeting minutes? Heather? And
I'll move to receive those.
And any comments on Tom?
No, I just wanted to make sure Martina
Okay.
saw that I was a seconder.
All in favor? It's carried. The Committee of Planning, February 25th, 2022. Any question, Heather? Are you
Nope,
moving
was just
that?
gonna make the motion.
Sure.
Yep.
that's fine.
Move to receive.
And Sheila is going to second it. And all in favor? I think they had to be received and adopted, eh? Right, Martina?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. For the planning minutes, they're received and adopted, but Committee of Adjustment is just received.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the bylaws. Is there any bylaw that council would like to pass separately? Heather?
Just 11.2. I just want to speak to it momentarily.
Sure. Do you want to move that one and speak to it or move the
You'd like me to
bylaw?
do that now? Sure.
Okay, go ahead
Yeah.
then. And
So,
seconded by Tom? Okay, Sheila, Heather, go ahead.
just wanted to share the good news story. This is to appoint a member onto the Canada Day Parade Committee because, yes, folks, in fact, the committee has pulled itself together and is going to once again try and mount a parade this Canada Day. So the group is extremely excited, and I'm sure the community will be hearing from us in due course.
Okay, thank you. So all in favor of that bylaw? Okay, that's passed. So bylaw delegation of powers, 11.1. Tom, are you moving that?
Yes, sir.
And Sheila? All in favor? It's carried. Correspondence action committees. Okay, 12.1, Township of Woolwich. Move to receive or Heather?
I'll move to receive.
Okay, seconder? Sheila, good. And all in favor? Carried. The town of Blue Mountain. I don't think we directly get involved with this, but what's the position of council? Heather?
Move to receive.
Okay, and it's seconded by Tom. Okay, I think those hands are going up quicker. All in favor? Carried. Okay, reports derived. Okay, no reports derived from previous notice of motions. Notice of motion, no notice of motion. Okay, announcements. This week, J. Mary Jones announced the removal of the emergency order for the township. That's one of the worst. COVID is still active, and there's all kinds of policies that'll continue for a while, but the emergency order is off for now, and hopefully it'll stay off for a long time. There's no closed session.
Mr.
Sure, go ahead, Tom.
Sorry for announcements. I would like to, on behalf of council, pass on condolences to Sean Eyre on the loss of his wife this past week. Sean's been in our community off and on for years. I forget, we had a wired woodshed show in the town hall. He was instrumental part of street dances years ago. So I would just like to, on record here, say condolences from all of us.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Any other announcements? Okay, no closed session, Rice, okay, matters arising, confirming bylaw.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Sheila, Heather, all in favor? Okay, I think next meeting's April the 5th, and Committee of Whole is April the 12th. Now, I see a Human Resource Committee meeting on March the 29th. Is that still scheduled? Okay. And also no service review meeting is scheduled yet. Is that correct? Okay. Okay, I think we're with it. Thank you very much for your help and cooperation tonight. Hopefully I didn't muff it too much.
No.
Okay, move to adjourn is Sheila and Heather. Okay, all in favor?
And you did a great job, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not fired then, eh?
No.
No, we'll keep you around till.
Okay.